I wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that we really don't get too much into because we expect it to just work out and we expect Howie to do what we think he's going to do. But I think this is a fair conversation to have. And that is the future of Jordan Davis, right? Now, I want to approach this conversation as delicately as I can and as reasonably as I can. Let me preface it with this. I'm a Jordan Davis fan. I like him as a person, like him as a player. Was excited when the Eagles drafted him. I still believe he has so much football, so much skill to tap into. I believe his ceiling is still relatively unclear because of just everything he brings to the table from an athletic standpoint, how powerful he is, the size. Um, his past 3 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles have been fascinating, right? They've been fascinating to say the least because, Jordan Davis came into the league 6'6". He's 336 pounds. It's a lot of man. 25 years old, from Charlotte, North Carolina, went to the University of Georgia, was a part of that storied program, winning a national championship. Former first round pick, 13th overall. The Philadelphia Eagles actually traded up to get him in the 2022 NFL draft. Went to Mallard Creek High School in North Carolina as well. And he was 22 years old when he landed with the Philadelphia Eagles. And people have always had their up and down opinions about Jordan Davis. Some people believe he's a bust still to this day. Some people believe that he's simply a run stopper. Some people believe that he can eventually elevate his game from just being a run stopper, but also being a quality pass rusher at the defensive tackle position. So those are the 3 categories that people fall into when it comes to Jordan Davis. Either they think he's a bust, either they believe he's a run stopper and that's all he will ever be, or they believe he can elevate his game to potentially be a solid pass rusher and an elite run defender. At the very, if anything, a 3-down player. Now, me personally, I, Tone DeShields, I fall into the category of I believe Jordan Davis can become a 3-down lineman, a 3-down defensive tackle who can be an elite run stopper and be a solid pass rusher. That's the category I fall in. But falling into that category means that you're hoping, means that you're trying to forecast, right? You're hoping for the best outcome. And falling into the bust category means that you don't really care what the Eagles do with him. You believe they can be better at that position. And falling into that middle ground of he's a 2-down guy, a run stopper, never really going to be a pass rusher, but he's a run stopper. You guys believe that, hey, the Eagles should definitely keep him around, but it all depends on the price tag. So this is where the conversation gets a little bit interesting because everyone has their own view of Jordan Davis. They typically fall into 3 categories, like I broke down, which then also puts his future in jeopardy. It makes his future relatively unclear. Because if you look at him as a bust, you believe the Philadelphia Eagles can do better, meaning that you don't want them to pick up the 5th-year option. If you believe he's a 2-down player, a run stopper, and that's all he will ever be, you probably believe the Philadelphia Eagles can pick up the 5th-year option and should try to work things out at a reasonable price tag. You probably also believe that they don't have to pick up the 5th-year option and they can negotiate a reasonable contract. The bottom line is you believe that, hey, I would like him on this team, but it has to be at a reasonable number. And then the people who fall into the 3-down defensive tackle category, the people who believe he can be a pass rusher, believe that, hey, I want him on his roster. He makes everybody better. He does the dirty work, but it has to be at a reasonable price tag, right? So when you go over his career, when you go over the course of his career, 2022, 13 games played, 5 starts, 18 total tackles, 1 TFL. Not impressive at all. 2023, 17 games played, 17 starts, 1 pass deflection, 1 forced fumble, 2.5 sacks, 45 total tackles, 18 solo, 2 TFLs. The 2024 season, 17 games played, 17 starts, 2 pass deflections, 1 fumble recovery, 1 sack in the regular season, 27 total tackles, 15 solo, 3 TFLs. He had 2 sacks in the playoffs, though, 1 in the NFC Championship on Jaden Daniels, and 1 in the Super Bowl on Patrick Mahomes. Now, granted, in 2023, he did have 5 quarterback hits. In 2024, he had 1 quarterback hit. 2022, he had none. You see, Jordan Davis, what he does doesn't necessarily jump off the stat sheet. What Jordan Davis does isn't something that's going to just continuously show up each and every time a big play is made. But if you look far, if you look close enough, you'll see that Jordan Davis, he occupies a lot of space. You can't just put one guy on him because of how powerful he is. He creates so many rush lanes for Jalen Carter, for Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, Milton Williams, all those guys when he was here. Nakobe Dean and Zack Baun in particular, the linebackers. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, of course, but Jordan Davis in particular, he's such an athletic freak. He occupies so much space. He's so powerful. He creates rush lanes for Zack Baun and Nakobe Dean when they're defending the run. He takes a lot of pressure off of those guys, right? So he does a lot of the dirty work that doesn't really get discussed enough, doesn't really get the credence and the reverence enough. But you have to ask yourself when you think about the money standpoint of it, because the Eagles are going to have to make a decision. The Eagles are going to have to make a decision. I don't know if you guys are fully aware of this, but May 1st is the NFL's deadline on teams deciding to pick up their rookie 5th-year options. Players who were drafted in the 2022 NFL draft, like Jordan Davis, if you were a first-round pick with a 5th-year option, the deadline to pick that up is May 1st. As you guys know, all rookies are given 4-year contracts. First rounders get a 5th-year option, a 5th-year team option at that. Now, we've seen Jordan Davis take a massive leap, especially entering this season. Took a massive leap this season in comparison to the 2023 season. We all know in 2023, he fell off a cliff after that Buffalo Bills game. The whole team did, but him in particular, he fell off a cliff in 2023. His conditioning has always been something that's a conversation. But in 2024, not once did we question his conditioning. Not once did we question his preparation. As a matter of fact, we didn't talk about him that much at all. And believe it or not, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That means he was doing his job. But it also means that he didn't jump off the screen. It also means that he didn't make too many plays. That's not to say nobody didn't benefit from what he did, because I'm sure Jalen Carter benefits from Jordan Davis being next to him. I'm sure Josh Sweat benefited from Jordan Davis being right there. I'm sure those guys benefited. Nolan Smith, so on and so forth. I'm sure they benefited. But again, what Jordan Davis does is so esoteric. It's so ambiguous. It's one of those things, if you know, you know. To the layman, to the naked eye, he looks like he's not doing much of anything. And he doesn't jump off the screen unless you know what to look for. But after everything I said, and he's a Super Bowl champion, right? He's a part of that Philly Bulldog crew. Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, N'Kobe Dean, Keely Ringo himself. He's a part of that Philly Bulldog crew. Let's not get it twisted. And they all play off each other. They all understand each other's tendencies. There's a chemistry there. Let's not get it twisted. But with everything I've said, despite how much of a benefit I believe he is to the team, despite what he does do well, despite the growth that we've seen in his game, playing under Clint Hurt and Vic Fangio, Clint Hurt got that boy right. Conditioning was never a question. They figured out how to use him. He was a first and second down player. That's what he was in 2024. And he would occasionally have a good pass rush. But he's such an athletic freak for the size. What's his ceiling? How good can he be? We really don't know. We know what he is now. And that's what we have to focus on. And after everything I said, that begs the question. Do the Philadelphia Eagles believe? Do the Philadelphia Eagles believe that Jordan Davis is replaceable? And that's something you have to ask yourself. As much as I recognize what Jordan Davis does well, as much as I recognize his value, as much as I believe his teammates benefit from his presence, which I believe they do, as much as I believe those things, is he replaceable? Because that's been the narrative of this offseason. Milton Williams is gone because Howie Roseman and the Eagles deem him as replaceable. Josh Sweat is gone because Howie Roseman and the Eagles deem him as replaceable. Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay, they're gone not just for financial reasons, but also because the team believes they're replaceable. Whether we like it or not, CJGJ was traded for financial reasons also, but they moved him because they felt like he is replaceable. So I ask you guys, is Jordan Davis replaceable? Do you guys believe the Eagles believe he is replaceable? Smash that like button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Let me read some of your commentary. Devontae Graham says, real football guys know Jordan Davis's worth. Andrew Mormon says, I guess Howie knows best, but I trade him to move up in this year's draft, then replace him this year with Calais Campbell and find a nose tackle on the late round of the draft. Michael Dijon says he is replaceable. Andrew Mormon says he's very replaceable. S. Blunt says Walter Nolan would be a great replacement for Milton, but he's not a replacement for Davis. Only legit replacement I see in this draft for Davis is either Kenneth Grant or Alfred Collins. Andrew Mormon says he might be the most replaceable guy not named N'Kobe Dean. Wow. Andrew really doesn't like JD. Sweet Chin Music says, I think Ajomo played as many snaps as he did. S. Blunt says we can't afford to lose him. If we don't draft a new nose tackle, then I believe his fifth-year deal will be given while they try to negotiate a longer-term deal. His role is key for stopping the run. S. Blunt, I agree with his role. Absolutely. Green Wingman says he could be used as a trade piece in this year's draft to up and get a Jordan Davis replacement. Sweet Chin Music says, yes, he is replaceable, and I believe the Eagles think the same. Fanny the Eagles fangirl says, Vita Vea is bigger than JD and moves better. Well, I don't know at this point in his career. Vita Vea is up there. Age. Well, I don't know how old Vita Vea is. Let me not assume that. But I know what you mean. Vita Vea is a freak. Green Wingman says, I think the Eagles are a bit disappointed in the production for a first round pick. I think that's reasonable to surmise. You drafted him first round, 13th overall. I think it's reasonable to surmise that they are disappointed in the overall production of the player. I think that's reasonable to assume. KGK says, I'm not sure if he's replaceable because he really don't have a ceiling or we don't know his ceiling. Ray Lester says, if Williams is replaceable, Davis is too. Green Wave says everyone is replaceable, but he is a core piece of that defense because you don't know how that player you replace him with will turn out. Well, I don't believe everyone is replaceable. That's what I don't believe. I'm with you until that part. I don't believe everyone is replaceable. Alex says, I think his comp deal could be something similar to what DJ Jones got in Denver. 3 years, $39 million, $26 million guaranteed if they decide to keep him. Interesting. Devontae Graham says, there's no guarantee you will get the same run-stopping ability from anyone else in this draft. AMHC says he's replaceable, but I'd rather not. Big Dog says, JD play like 15 snaps a game. Super replaceable. Carrot Green says he is replaceable, but should be affordable based on his playing time and the fact that he's limited to rundowns. Ray Lester says, when is Jordan Davis going to play 3 straight downs? You guys are all asking reasonable questions. You guys are all bringing up very reasonable points. I want to make that very clear. You guys are all bringing up very reasonable points that I can't definitively argue against, but I will attempt to. Jordan Davis, to me, he's a unique player. I say unique because of the size in combination with the athleticism, with the run-stopping ability, and the power. I can't deny what he does for Nakobe Dean. What he does for Zack Baun, what he does for I can't deny that because he keeps the linebackers clean. He keeps them clean. One of the reasons Zack Baun and Nakobe Dean were so good in run defense, obviously they were good at tackling in space, but also they were able to be kept clean, and they were able to slice through the line of scrimmage and get those TFLs. Me personally, I would like to retain Jordan Davis, but it has to be at a reasonable number. And because he's a 2-down lineman right now, that number should be very reasonable. But defensive tackle contracts are going sky high. And let's be honest, Jordan Davis would not command a Milton Williams contract because pass rushing ability comes at a higher premium than run stopping ability because we are in a passing league nonetheless. A pass rusher will always get held to a higher standard than a run stopper in this new NFL. That's a fact. So I don't want us to get too wrapped up in comparing him to Milton Williams. Milton Williams is a better pass rusher, but Milton Williams is way smaller. He's way smaller. But somebody brought up a very good point earlier. The Eagles are probably disappointed with the overall production they've gotten from that position, from him in particular. I think the Eagles would, if you had to ask the Eagles today, are you disappointed with the production you've gotten from Jordan Davis? Yes or no? And if that was their only options, I think they would have to lean more towards yes. You drafted him with a top 15 pick, 13th overall, and he hasn't really taken that next step as a pass rusher quite yet. Hasn't taken a massive step, rather. I think he has improved a smidge or steadily, but it hasn't really been a massive enough leap for them. He hasn't developed at the rate they probably would have expected, but his conditioning, his motor has vastly improved. But how can we definitively say that when he's only playing what? He only played 388 snaps. If you divide his 388 snaps played by the amount of games he played, Jordan Davis on the 2024 season, he averaged almost 23 snaps a game. Almost 23 snaps a game. Now, the Eagles defense just to give you guys an idea of something real quick. So, again, keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. Okay? Jordan Davis, he played 388 snaps and averages almost 23 snaps a game for his 2024 season. Milton Williams played 501 snaps. And averaged 29 snaps a game. So Jordan Davis averaged 23 snaps a game. Milton Williams averaged 29 snaps a game. They were splitting reps. And Jalen Carter was on the field for 831 snaps. And Jalen Carter played 16 games. Jalen Carter averaged 52 snaps a game. So Jordan Davis averaged 23 snaps a game. Milton Williams averaged 29 snaps a game. Jalen Carter averaged 52 snaps a game. And Jalen Carter was on the field primarily most of the time. So 29 plus 23, that's 52. Interesting. The math is mathing here. The math is mathing. Jalen Carter averaged 52 snaps a game. Jordan Davis, 23. Milton Williams, 29. 29 plus 23 is 52. Quite literally, they split carries. Quite literally. So, could we expect the same thing from Moro Ojomo? Will Moro Ojomo have more snaps than Milton Williams? Than Jordan Davis? Listen to this. Moro Ojomo. Wow. Peep this. Peep this. Listen to this. Jordan Davis averaged 23 snaps a game. Milton Williams averaged 29 snaps a game. Jalen Carter averaged 52 snaps a game. Let me ask you guys a question. How many snaps do you believe Moro Ojomo averaged a game? How many snaps did Moro Ojomo average a game? Jordan Davis averaged 23. Milton Williams averaged 29. Jalen Carter averaged 52. How many snaps do you guys believe Moro Ojomo averaged per game? Just take a guess. Take a wild guess. If you already look, you don't count. Just take a guess. Chaotic says 12. Fanny says 13. If you already checked it, because some of y'all too spot on, you checked already. I could tell you checked already. Andrew Mormon says 15. Matt Week says 20. He averaged 23 snaps a game. 16. Sean says 16. Moro Ojomo averaged 23 snaps per game. Interesting, right? So, see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Moro Ojomo, 6'3", 292. Milton Williams, 6'3", 290. Moro Ojomo and Milton Williams had the exact same archetype, the exact same frame, the exact same build. Moro Ojomo, 6'3", 292. Milton Williams, 6'3", 290. Those players are exactly the same as far as archetype, as far as frame, as far as measurables go. Moro Ojomo was directly drafted to potentially be the Milton Williams replacement. So we could potentially see a similar situation where, again, unless Jordan Davis elevates his game as a pass rusher, if all things remain the same, we can expect Jordan Davis to continue to average 23 snaps a game, and Moro Ojomo will take a jump to 29. And Jalen Carter will continue to average 52 snaps a game, around that number. Now we're just looking at numbers. There's so much nuance within these numbers. There's so much nuance tied into these stats. So much nuance. And the numbers don't really give you that, because I believe the nuanced conversation to have is that Jordan Davis is a player that you would like on your team because of what he does. But it always will come back to the money. It's always going to, unless Jordan Davis can make that leap as a pass rusher, because we know he can stop the run. We know that. If Jordan Davis can go from being a guy who can give you maybe two sacks a season, maybe 2. If he can go from that to being a D tackle that can give you at least 5, even 4. If Jordan Davis can elevate to giving you about 4 to 5 sacks a game, I mean a season. No, as a nose tackle, by the way, because he's a nose tackle. He's not your traditional D tackle. He's a nose tackle. And the Eagles like to have depth on the D line. Jalen Carter is a unicorn to the point where he can be on the field most of the time and still be effective. He's a unicorn in that regard. But the Eagles like to rotate D linemen. If the math is right, if the contract numbers make sense for the Eagles, I can see them keeping Jordan Davis. But will they pick up the 5th-year option?